Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. Isabella Hart signed the divorce papers without a single tear. That was what made her husband angry. Not the divorce, not the silence, not the fact that he had brought his pregnant mistress to the law office and seated her in the leather chair beside him like a witness to his victory. It was Isabella's dry eyes. Adrian Cross had expected a performance. One trembling hand, one broken whisper, one final question about whether 8 years of marriage had meant anything. He had dressed for that moment in a charcoal suit, white shirt, and the expensive watch Isabella had bought him when his company survived its first investor crisis. He wanted her to look abandoned. Instead, she looked finished. The conference room sat on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Manhattan, with a winter sky pressed against the windows and the city glittering below like something cold and purchased. Isabella sat at one end of the table in a black wool dress, her chestnut hair pinned at the nape of her neck, her face calm enough to make everyone else uncomfortable. Across from her, Adrian leaned back with one arm over the chair behind Camilla Reed. Camilla was 27, blonde, glossy, and visibly pregnant beneath a pale blue cashmere dress. She kept one hand on her stomach and the other on Adrian's sleeve, as if the baby had made her tender and the sleeve had made him hers. Adrian's mother, Victoria Cross, sat near the window with her pearls, her silver hair, and the faint smile of a woman watching an old problem being removed from a family portrait. "You are very composed," Victoria said. Isabella looked up from the last page. "Would you prefer noise?" The room went still. Camilla blinked. Adrian's jaw tightened. Victoria's smile thinned. "I meant it as a compliment." "No, you did not." Isabella signed the final line. Her attorney, Malcolm Price, slid the page toward Adrian's counsel. Malcolm was a quiet man with gray hair, square glasses, and a talent for making silence feel procedural. He had advised Isabella not to react, not because emotion would harm her case, but because the Cross family fed on visible wounds. Adrian stared at Isabella's signature. Isabella Hart Cross. Soon, only Isabella Hart again. "That is it?" he asked. His voice carried disbelief, and beneath it, injury. She capped the pen. "That is what signing means." Camilla's fingers tightened on his sleeve. Victoria gave a soft sigh. "Some women are too proud to grieve in public." Isabella turned to her. "Some families are too practiced at confusing cruelty with observation." Adrian sat forward. "Do not speak to my mother that way." There it was. The reflex. The old formation. Victoria cut. Adrian defended. Isabella was expected to absorb. For years she had. She had smiled through dinners where Victoria praised Camilla's natural warmth after Camilla joined Cross Meridian as Adrian's executive liaison. She had hosted investors while Adrian flirted across rooms. She had listened when he said Camilla understood the pressure of leadership in a way Isabella no longer did. Then Camilla became pregnant. Then Adrian called the pregnancy complicated. Then Victoria called it a blessing. Then everyone discovered how quickly complicated blessings required legal paperwork. Isabella set the pen on the table. "Your mother spent 8 years speaking about me as if I were furniture that disappointed her. She can survive one sentence." Adrian's eyes flashed. "You are not helping yourself." Malcolm spoke calmly. "The documents are signed. There is nothing further to help." Camilla looked at Isabella with wide, damp eyes. "I know you hate me." Isabella studied her. The younger woman had rehearsed that line. Hate would make Camilla central. Hate would make the betrayal feel grander than it was. Hate would allow her to stand in the room as the woman who had inspired passion instead of the employee who had accepted a married man's version of sadness and mistaken access for destiny. "No," Isabella said. "I know you." Camilla went pale. That was worse. Adrian stood abruptly. "Enough. You signed. Let us end this with dignity." Isabella almost smiled. Dignity. The word men discovered after arranging humiliation. She rose and took her coat from the back of the chair. Victoria's gaze dropped to the coat. Plain black wool. Beautiful cut. No obvious designer mark. Victoria had always mistaken quiet taste for lack of status. That mistake had been useful. "I hope the settlement is enough for you to restart," Victoria said. The settlement. A townhouse buyout offer far below value. A lump sum Adrian believed generous because he still thought the house, the company shares, and most of their life had been his to divide. Isabella slid her gloves on slowly. I have already started. Adrian laughed once. With what? No one answered. Not yet. Chapter 2. The first crack in Adrian's victory appeared in the elevator. They all took the same one down because the universe had a taste for clean staging. Adrian stood beside Camilla, his hand at her back. Victoria stood near the mirrored wall, watching Isabella with the satisfaction of a woman waiting for delayed collapse. Isabella faced the doors. Her reflection looked calm. That did not mean she felt nothing. Inside her chest, 8 years moved like ghosts through a locked house. Adrian at 29, terrified before his first major pitch. Adrian crying after his father died. Adrian barefoot in their kitchen, promising that if she believed in him for one more year, he would spend the rest of his life proving she had been right. She had believed him for 1 year, then another, then too many. The elevator descended past floors of law firms, private equity offices, and consulting suites. Numbers glowed above the doors. 40, 39, 38. Camilla broke first. Are you really not going to say anything to him? Isabella looked at her in the mirror. I signed a legal document. You know what I mean. I usually do. That is the problem. Adrian's mouth tightened. Camilla is trying to be kind. No. She is trying to confirm she won. Camilla's lips parted. Victoria snapped. She is carrying Adrian's child. Then I hope she learns the difference between being protected and being used. Adrian turned toward her. Do not make this about Camilla. Isabella finally looked at him. You brought her to the signing. The elevator fell silent. Adrian looked away first. That small defeat did not comfort her. Nothing about this was comfort. But it told her the old spell was gone. Once, she would have softened to spare him embarrassment. Once, she would have protected his pride even while he wounded hers. Now she let him stand inside what he had chosen. The doors opened to the lobby. Outside, cameras flashed. Adrian froze. Not press cameras. Not yet. A few society photographers hired by Victoria's people to capture the image of Adrian Cross stepping into his new life with the mother of his future child. Victoria had arranged it, of course. A clean exit photo. The discarded wife leaving separately. The new family framed under marble columns. Except the discarded wife walked out first. The doorman straightened. Mrs. Hart, he said. Not Mrs. Cross. Mrs. Hart. The photographers lowered their cameras for half a second, confused by the sudden shift in gravity. At the curb, a car waited. Not a rideshare, not a black sedan ordered by a law firm, a deep emerald 1967 Aston Martin DB6, restored to impossible perfection, chrome gleaming under the winter light, its engine idled with a low, controlled purr. The license plate read Hart 1. Adrian stopped so suddenly Camilla bumped into his arm. His face emptied. For years, he had talked about that car, the Hart DB6. One of the rarest private restorations in the country, once owned by a reclusive collector whose family refused to sell. Adrian had shown Isabella photographs of it late at night when he still believed dreams were intimate. He had said if Cross Meridian ever reached $1 billion valuation, he would buy it and drive it up the coast. He had never known the reclusive collector was Isabella's grandfather. He had never known the Hart family still owned the car. He had never known Isabella could have driven it any day she wanted. The driver stepped out, but Isabella lifted one hand. Thank you, Thomas. I will drive. Thomas handed her the keys. Adrian found his voice. That car. Isabella looked at him over the roof. Yes. How? She opened the door. My family never sold it. Victoria's expression changed first. Not shock. Recognition of a mistake too old to fix. Adrian stared at Isabella as if the coat, the calm, the signature, the woman herself had all become unfamiliar. Your family? Isabella slid into the driver's seat. The leather smelled of cedar, polish, and history that did not need to announce itself. Camilla whispered, Adrian, what is happening? Isabella started the car. The engine deepened. She looked once at her ex-husband through the open window. You thought I left with your settlement, she said. I left with my keys. Then she drove away. Chapter 3. The video reached the internet before Isabella crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. Adrian Cross stunned as ex-wife leaves divorce signing in legendary Hart DB6. That was the first caption. By sunset, there were others. Who is Isabella Hart? Cross, Meridian founder's ex-wife tied to old Hart shipping fortune. Pregnant girlfriend watches as billionaire ex-wife drives off in collector car. Isabella disliked every headline. Billionaire ex-wife was inaccurate, ugly, and useful only to people who needed wealth to explain why a woman did not break. She had not been strong because of the car. She had been strong because she had survived the room before the car ever arrived. Still, the image worked. Adrian standing frozen. Camilla holding her stomach. Victoria's face pale with sudden recalculation. Isabella driving away without looking back. Public humiliation had been arranged for her. The public chose a different frame. She parked the DB6 in the private garage beneath the Hart Foundation offices and sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Only then did she cry. Not long, not elegantly. Enough to prove she had not become stone. Her phone buzzed. Malcolm, she answered on speaker. "You are trending," he said. "That sounds contagious." Adrian's attorney called. "Already? They want clarification on undisclosed assets." Isabella wiped under one eye with the back of her glove. "The car is premarital trust property." "Yes, they know. They are panicking more generally." "Good." Also, Cross Meridian's board requested an emergency briefing from North Pier Capital. Isabella looked through the windshield at the concrete wall. North Pier Capital, her family's investment vehicle, the silent early backer of Cross Meridian. The firm Adrian believed had trusted him because of his vision, discipline, and aggressive growth strategy. North Pier had invested because Isabella asked them to. At first, she did it because she loved him. Later, because employees depended on the company. Eventually, because the covenants gave her a legal way to stop him from turning marital betrayal into corporate fraud. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning. I will be there," I assumed. She ended the call and sat in the car until her breathing steadied. Then she took out a small envelope from her bag. Inside was the copy of the signed divorce decree. She looked at her signature. No tears on the paper. People would call that cold. They did not know she had cried in private rooms for months. In showers, in taxis, in the pantry after finding Camilla's earring under the guest table. In the nursery, they had never finished because Adrian kept saying it was not the right time, then gave Camilla a baby before he gave Isabella the truth. No, she had not cried while signing. She had already paid that price. Chapter 4. Adrian did not call Isabella that night. Victoria did. Isabella let it ring, then listened to the voicemail. "Isabella, this is Victoria. I believe there has been a misunderstanding about several matters. It would be best for everyone if we spoke before this becomes unnecessarily public." Unnecessarily public. The phrase was impressive, considering Victoria had hired photographers to turn Isabella's divorce exit into a society tableau. A second voicemail arrived 40 minutes later. "You have embarrassed Adrian at a sensitive time. Camilla is under stress. Think carefully about how vindictiveness looks on a woman in your position." There it was, the old language. If Isabella was wounded, she was dramatic. If she was calm, she was cold. If she left quietly, she was defeated. If she left in a car they did not know she owned, she was vindictive. She saved both voicemails. Not because they hurt, because patterns mattered. At 9, Adrian finally texted, "We need to talk." Isabella looked at the message while standing in the kitchen of her new apartment. It was smaller than the townhouse, brighter, with high windows and no memory of Adrian's footsteps. Her coat hung by the door. The DB6 keys sat in a blue ceramic bowl. She replied, "Contact Malcolm." Adrian, "Do not hide behind lawyers." Isabella, "Do not confuse boundaries with hiding." He did not answer. For 12 minutes. Then, was any of it real? She stared at that one. Men like Adrian loved asking that after destroying what was real. As if the discovery of her resources rewrote her love into strategy. As if every dinner, every model she built, every investor she softened, every night she stayed awake while he panicked, became false because she had not entered poverty to prove devotion. She typed, "Yes, that is why it cost so much." Then she turned off the phone. Chapter 5. Cross Meridian's emergency board meeting began at 8 the next morning. Isabella arrived at 7:55, not in the DB6. That would have been theatrical, and she had used enough theater for 1 week. She arrived in a black sedan with Malcolm, wearing a dark green suit, her hair loose around her shoulders, a leather folder in her hand. The Cross Meridian boardroom occupied the top floor of Adrian's headquarters. Glass walls, long walnut table, city views. The kind of room designed to make ambitious men feel chosen by the skyline. Adrian was already there. He looked tired. Still handsome, but less certain. Camilla was not present. Victoria was, despite having no board seat. She sat against the wall in cream silk and pearls, pretending observer status was voluntary. The board chair, Helena Frost, greeted Isabella first. Mrs. Hart. Adrian flinched at the name. Isabella sat across from him. North Pier's counsel opened with the facts. Cross Meridian had received early capital from North Pier under a series of convertible instruments and governance covenants. Those covenants included misconduct triggers, disclosure obligations, and restrictions on related party asset transfer. Adrian leaned forward. This is absurd. My divorce has nothing to do with company governance. Isabella opened her folder. Malcolm did not smile, but she sensed he wanted to. North Pier's counsel continued. The concern is not the divorce. The concern is the use of company resources, undisclosed compensation, and the potential misrepresentation of marital assets and investor relationships. Helena looked at Adrian. Explain Camilla Reed's compensation change. Adrian's jaw tightened. She is a senior communications strategist. The CFO, Martin Ellis, looked down at his notes. Helena noticed. Martin? Martin cleared his throat. Ms. Reed's compensation increased by 400% over 8 months. Housing stipend, travel budget, executive medical coverage, and consulting bonus categories were added. Victoria spoke from the wall. Camilla is carrying Adrian's child. Helena turned slowly. That is not a compensation category. The room went silent. Isabella felt no joy. Only a grim sense of order returning. North Pier's counsel displayed another document. Company funds had paid for a private apartment used by Adrian and Camilla. Executive wellness funds had covered prenatal concierge services. Communications budget had paid for a reputation transition consultant tasked with presenting Camilla as future family-facing partner after the divorce. Isabella looked at Adrian. He did not look at her. The reputation consultant had drafted 3 public narratives. One described Isabella as emotionally reserved and mutually separated from Adrian for years. One described Camilla as a source of warmth after a lonely marriage. One suggested the divorce settlement reflected Adrian's generosity toward a wife who had never embraced the Cross family. Victoria's fingerprints were all over the language. Isabella finally spoke. You planned the story before the divorce was signed. Adrian looked up. I planned damage control. You planned my erasure. He exhaled sharply. You are not erased. You are everywhere this morning. Because your mother hired cameras. Victoria's face tightened. Helena looked toward her. Is that true? Victoria said nothing. Silence again. It had become her family's most honest language. Chapter 6. The board suspended Adrian's executive authority pending review. Victoria called it outrageous. Helena called it governance. Camilla called Adrian 7 times during the meeting. He did not answer until after the vote. Isabella saw his phone light up on the table and felt a strange, detached pity for the younger woman. Camilla had thought pregnancy made her secure. She did not yet understand that in families like Adrian's, pregnancy made her valuable, and valuable things were managed. After the meeting, Adrian followed Isabella into the hallway. You did not have to do that. She kept walking. I did not vote alone. You knew what would happen. Yes. You could have warned me. That made her stop. She turned to face him. I warned you for years. His expression shifted. I warned you when you charged personal travel to client development. I warned you when you promoted Camilla without board review. I warned you when your mother started planting stories about our marriage. I warned you when you began treating company accounts like extensions of your mood. He looked away. You called it negativity, Isabella said. You said I did not believe in you. You made me feel small. There it was. The old wound he had turned into permission. Isabella's voice softened, not from weakness, but because the truth deserved no shouting. No. I saw where you were small, and instead of growing, you punished me for seeing. Adrian's eyes reddened. For a moment, the hallway disappeared, and she saw him years earlier, standing in their old apartment with a cheap bottle of wine, asking whether she thought he was ridiculous for wanting to build something enormous. She had said no. She had meant it. He said, Did you ever love me without measuring me? The question hurt. It was meant to. I loved you enough to measure the risks you refused to see, she said. That was my mistake. I thought saving you from consequences was partnership. He looked down. And now? Now I know partnership requires 2 adults. She walked away before he could turn the sentence into a wound for himself. Chapter 7. Camilla came to Isabella 3 days later. Not to the apartment. To Heart Foundation headquarters. She arrived in a beige coat with no makeup except mascara smudged under one eye. Pregnancy had softened her face and sharpened her fear. She stood in the reception area holding a leather folder against her chest while the receptionist called upstairs. Isabella almost refused. Then the receptionist said, "She says Victoria Cross gave her something to sign." Isabella closed her eyes. Of course. Powerful families did not stop controlling women when the first one left. They moved to the next. Camilla entered the conference room with visible hesitation. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. 10 minutes. Camilla nodded and sat. She placed the folder on the table. Victoria said it protects the baby. Isabella did not touch it yet. Did your lawyer review it? Victoria said family documents do not need outside lawyers. That means they need outside lawyers. Camilla's lips trembled. Isabella opened the folder. Cross-family, maternal support, and confidentiality agreement. The document offered housing, medical care, child trust provisions, security, and public relations support. It also gave the cross-family authority to review Camilla's medical updates, manage press statements, restrict personal relationships deemed harmful to the child, and seek custody influence if Camilla violated morality or confidentiality clauses. Isabella pushed the folder back. Do not sign this. Camilla, Adrian said it was standard. Adrian does not read what benefits him. The younger woman's face crumpled. I thought he loved me. Isabella looked at her for a long moment. There were cruel answers available. She chose accuracy. He may. That does not mean he knows how to protect you from the machinery he was raised inside. Camilla covered her mouth. I did not know about North Pier, she whispered. He told me you were dependent on him. He said you would get a settlement and leave. I know what he said. I believed him. You wanted to. Camilla nodded through tears. Yes, that was honest. Not enough, but a beginning. Isabella wrote 3 attorney names on a card. They do not work for me. Choose one or find another. Do not sign anything from Victoria without counsel. Do not let them manage your doctor. Do not confuse access to a family with safety inside it. Camilla took the card with shaking fingers. Why are you helping me? I am not helping you win, Isabella said. I am helping the child not become a contract. Camilla looked down at her stomach and cried harder. Chapter 8. The public story shifted again when Camilla hired independent counsel. Victoria was furious. Adrian was embarrassed. Isabella was unsurprised. Camilla's attorney sent a preservation letter to the Cross family office, Cross Meridian, and Victoria personally. It requested all communications related to Camilla's compensation, pregnancy, housing, public image, and proposed maternal agreement. The board noticed. The press noticed. Investors noticed most of all. By Friday, Cross Meridian's stock dipped. By Monday, Helena Frost announced an independent governance review. By Wednesday, Adrian's temporary suspension became indefinite. Victoria called Isabella again. This time, Isabella answered. You have gone too far, Victoria said without greeting. Good morning. Do not patronize me. Then do not call before coffee. Victoria inhaled sharply. You are turning Camilla against the family. You offered her a contract that could turn motherhood into supervised employment. She is carrying a crosshair. She is carrying a child. You always did choose language that made everyone else sound cruel. Isabella looked out the office window at the city. No, Victoria, I choose language that removes ownership. For once, Victoria did not answer immediately. Then she said, Adrian was right to leave you. There it was. The sentence Victoria had been waiting years to say plainly. Isabella felt it enter, then pass. Perhaps, she said. It gave me room to stop protecting him. She ended the call. 5 minutes later, she forwarded the recording to Malcolm. Patterns mattered. Chapter 9. The divorce settlement Adrian once believed generous became irrelevant after the forensic review. Not because Isabella reopened it emotionally. Because Adrian had concealed liabilities. The apartment. Camilla's compensation. Reputation consultants. Personal travel, prenatal concierge expenses, draft statements about Isabella, all tied to company or family office accounts in ways that affected asset disclosures. Malcolm filed a motion. Adrian's attorney called it aggressive. Malcolm called it math. The hearing took place in a private conference chamber before a retired judge assigned to their settlement dispute. Adrian appeared with his legal team. Victoria appeared despite being advised not to. Camilla did not. Isabella wore navy, not black this time. She had learned grief did not require a uniform. Adrian's side argued that the signed divorce agreement should stand. Isabella had signed knowingly, calmly, and without distress. The public car moment, his attorney implied carefully, showed she had not been financially vulnerable. Malcolm smiled. My client's composure is not a waiver of disclosure obligations. He presented the concealed accounts, the underreported marital spending, the company paid benefits that created tax and liability issues, the draft public narrative designed to depress Isabella's bargaining position by making her look cold, childless, and already emotionally separated. The retired judge read the documents with increasing displeasure. Adrian sat rigidly. Victoria whispered something to him. The judge looked up. Mrs. Cross, if you are advising a party, please do so outside my hearing. Victoria went silent. Isabella almost enjoyed that. Almost. The judge ordered supplemental disclosure, froze disputed transfers, and reopened financial review tied to concealed liabilities. The settlement would not be voided automatically, but Adrian's clean exit disappeared. Afterward, in the hallway, Adrian said, You signed without a tear because you knew you had this waiting. Isabella looked at him. No. I signed without a tear because I had none left for that room. He looked away. That answer hurt him more than strategy would have. Chapter 10. Adrian lost the company in stages. First authority, then allies, then the story. Cross Meridian survived because Isabella did not want employees punished for Adrian's ego. North Pier helped arrange a restructuring. Martin Ellis became interim CEO. Helena Frost stayed as chair. A strategic buyer acquired the most unstable division. Adrian's equity was reduced, but not erased. Isabella insisted on that, to Malcolm's surprise. You could push harder, he said. I know. Why not? Isabella looked through the glass wall at Cross Meridian employees, leaving a town hall with the stunned relief of people who still had jobs. Because this is not arson. Malcolm nodded. Surgery, then. Messy surgery. Most real ones are. Adrian publicly stepped down 6 months after the divorce signing. His statement thanked the board, employees, and investors. It did not mention Isabella. It did not have to. Everyone knew. Camilla gave birth 2 months later to a daughter, Lily Reed, not Lily Cross. The surname caused 3 days of society whispers and 1 private earthquake in Victoria's house. Adrian did not contest it. That was his first decent decision in months. Camilla sent Isabella 1 note. She is safe. I am safe. Thank you for telling me not to sign. Isabella read it once and placed it in a drawer. Not forgiveness, not friendship. Record. Chapter 11. The DB6 became a symbol Isabella never asked for. Women sent messages about it. I want to drive away like that. I watched that clip before signing my own papers. The car was not the point, but I needed to see him shocked. At first, Isabella resisted the symbolism. The car was family history, not a brand. Her grandfather had restored it after surviving a hostile takeover that nearly cost him everything. He used to say the car taught him that beautiful things needed maintenance, not worship. Eventually, she understood why the image mattered. It was not about wealth. It was about exit. A woman signed papers in silence. Everyone assumed she had been diminished. Then she walked outside, took her own keys, and left in something that had never belonged to the man watching her go. That was the fantasy. Ownership of the exit. Isabella began using the car once a year for the Heart Foundation's legal clinic fundraiser. Not as a prize. As a centerpiece for a program called Drive Away Day, funding transport, legal consults, and emergency housing for women leaving coercive marriages. The first year, she stood beside the DB6 in a simple black suit and said, Not every woman leaves in a rare car. Most leave in borrowed sedans, buses, taxis, court-ordered moving vans, or on foot with 1 bag. The vehicle is not the dignity. The choice is. The clip of that speech spread nearly as far as the original divorce exit. Isabella liked that one better. Chapter 12. Adrian came to Drive Away Day in the 3rd year. He did not tell her first. That was almost enough to have security remove him. But he bought a ticket under his own name, arrived alone, and stayed near the back. He looked older, still handsome, but less polished. Life had rubbed the shine off him in places. Isabella saw him during the panel on financial disclosure. Her stomach tightened, then settled. After the event, he approached with both hands visible, as if nearing a wary animal. Perhaps he was. Isabella. Adrian. He looked toward the DB6 parked beneath soft event lights. Your grandfather had good taste. Yes, I used to think that car represented everything I wanted. And now? He gave a faint smile. Now I think it represented everything I did not understand. That was almost a good answer. She waited. He continued, Camilla is doing well, Lily too. I am glad. I see Lily twice a week. Supervised at first, not anymore. Good. He looked down. My mother moved to Palm Beach. Also good. He laughed softly. For a moment, the old ease tried to enter the conversation. Isabella did not open the door. Adrian seemed to understand. I came to say thank you, he said. She looked at him. For not burning the company down when you could have. I did not do it for you. I know. He looked at the women leaving the event with folders, tote bags, and the tired brightness of people who had received practical help. That is why it matters. Isabella accepted the sentence with a nod. Then he said, I am sorry I made you feel like your quiet meant you could be replaced without consequence. The apology landed somewhere old, not deep enough to reopen, deep enough to be heard. Thank you, she said. He did not ask for forgiveness. That was wise. Chapter 13. Victoria Cross never apologized in person. She sent a letter, heavy cream paper, sharp handwriting, no perfume. Isabella nearly threw it away. Then she opened it because avoidance was still a form of attachment, and she preferred clean endings. Isabella, I spent years believing you were quiet because you had nothing to say. I was wrong. You were quiet because you did not need to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. I do not ask forgiveness. I will say this once. I treated Camilla as a vessel, you as an obstacle, and Adrian as a prince whose flaws were someone else's responsibility. That did harm. Lily is beautiful. Camilla does not trust me. That is fair. The car was magnificent. Victoria Isabella read the letter twice. The last line almost made her laugh. It was the most Victoria apology possible. She placed it in the drawer with Camilla's note. Some records belonged together. Chapter 14. The legal clinics grew into a national program, not because of the car alone, because women needed logistics more than slogans. Heart Foundation built a network of attorneys, financial planners, transport providers, document storage specialists, and trauma counselors. The program helped women prepare exits before the public drama, before the final fight, before the moment everyone else decided whether they looked sad enough to deserve help. Isabella insisted on one rule. No one had to cry to qualify. Tears are not evidence, she told the first training class. Neither is their absence. That became the program's motto. She knew why it mattered. The world had watched her sign divorce papers without tears and made a story from it. Some called her powerful. Some called her cold. Few understood the simplest truth. She had cried before, she had cried after. She had not cried there, because the room did not deserve her tears. Chapter 15 years later, Isabella drove the DB6 up the coast alone. No cameras, no Adrian, no settlement papers, no message to prove she had moved on. Just ocean, road, engine, and winter light flashing over the hood. She stopped at a small overlook where the water crashed against dark rocks below. The wind pulled at her hair. She leaned against the car and let the cold enter her lungs. For a long time after the divorce, people asked whether she missed Adrian. The honest answer changed by year. At first, yes. Then, no. Then, sometimes. Then, I miss who I was before I learned what I could survive. Now the answer was quieter. She missed nothing that required her to be smaller. She remembered everything. There was a difference. Isabella took the old divorce decree from her bag. She did not carry it always, only that day. The paper had softened at the folds. Her signature remained dark. She looked at it one last time. Then she slid it back into the envelope. She did not throw it into the sea. That would have been dramatic and illegal. Her grandfather would have disapproved of both. Instead, she placed it in the glove compartment beside the registration papers. History belonged in files, not in her hands. Chapter 16. At the fifth drive-away day, A young woman approached Isabella after the final workshop. She was maybe 24, with dark curls, a denim jacket, and a folder clutched to her chest. "Can I ask you something?" the woman said. "Of course. When you signed without crying, were you trying to look strong?" Isabella considered the question. The room around them buzzed with conversations. Attorneys packing bags, volunteers stacking chairs, women exchanging numbers. Outside, the DB6 waited beneath the evening lights, less a car now than a green myth people photographed politely. "No," Isabella said. The woman looked surprised. "I was trying to finish." The young woman's eyes filled. "I cried in mediation," she said. "A lot." "Good." "Good? It means your body told the truth. Mine waited." The woman let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob. Isabella touched the edge of the folder, not the woman's hand. "Do not let anyone grade your grief." The woman nodded. Later, Isabella wrote that sentence on a card and placed it on her desk. Do not let anyone grade your grief. It was better than most legal disclaimers. Chapter 17. The Hart Foundation eventually bought a building near the courthouse. Not glamorous, practical. The first floor had legal intake rooms. The second held financial counseling offices. The third had temporary rest spaces for women between signing and leaving. Every consultation room had tissues, water, charging cables, and 2 exits. In the lobby, above the reception desk, hung a photograph of the DB6. Not the viral photo. Not Adrian's stunned face. Not Camilla's panic. Just the car on an empty road at dawn. Under it, a small brass plaque read, "The dignity is not the vehicle. The dignity is the choice." On opening day, Isabella did not cut a ribbon. She handed the first client a set of printed documents and said, "Let us look at what is yours." That felt more honest. Chapter 18. Adrian's daughter turned 6 the year Isabella turned 43. Camilla sent a photo through mutual counsel, not because she owed Isabella anything, but because years earlier Isabella had made sure Lily would not be born into a contract cage. In the photo, Lily stood beside a red bicycle, missing one front tooth, hair wild, face bright with the unreasonable confidence of loved children. On the back of the printed card, Camilla wrote, "She knows cars are machines, not kingdoms. I thought you would appreciate that." Isabella did. She placed the card in the same drawer as Camilla's first note and Victoria's letter. The drawer was not forgiveness. It was context. Life after betrayal had more context than people wanted. Chapter 19. The last time Isabella saw Adrian, he was walking out of a bookstore. No drama, no rain, no lawyers. He held a book under one arm and a paper coffee cup in the other. For a second, they looked at each other as strangers who knew too much. "Isabella," he said. "Adrian." He glanced at the book in his hand and laughed softly. "Parenting book. Good. Humbling genre. Most useful ones are." He nodded. There was no apology left to give that would change anything. No question worth reopening. No performance they owed the sidewalk. He said, "You look well." "I am." This time the answer did not seem to hurt him. Or maybe he had learned not to make her wellness about him. "I am glad," he said. She believed him. That was pleasant. Unnecessary, but pleasant. They walked in opposite directions. That was all. That was enough. Chapter 20. On the 10th anniversary of the divorce signing, Isabella held no event. She forgot until Malcolm sent a text. 10 years since the cleanest signature I ever witnessed. She replied, "You need hobbies." He sent back, "This is my hobby." Isabella laughed in her office. That evening, she took the DB6 out of storage and drove through the city at dusk. People still turned to look at the car. They always would. She no longer wondered whether they recognized the video or only the beauty of the machine. At a red light, a young woman in the next car rolled down her window. "Are you Isabella Hart?" Isabella hesitated, then nodded. The woman smiled. "I signed last month. I cried the whole time. Then I drove away in my sister's minivan." Isabella smiled back. "Excellent vehicle. It smelled like crackers. Most reliable cars do." The light changed. The woman called, "Thank you." Then traffic carried them apart. Isabella drove home with a strange warmth in her chest. Not pride exactly. Kinship. The world was full of exits. Some roared, some rattled, some smelled like crackers. All of them counted. Chapter 21. The next morning, Adrian walked into Cross Meridian wearing the expression of a man who still believed a room could be conquered by posture. His jaw was clean-shaven, his tie was perfect, and his cufflinks flashed as he passed the glass security gates. The lobby staff looked down at their screens too quickly. One assistant froze with a coffee cup halfway to her mouth. A junior analyst stepped aside as if Adrian carried bad weather on his shoulders. He noticed all of it. For years, people had moved aside because he was important. That morning, they moved aside because they did not want to be seen near him. Adrian hated the difference. He reached the executive floor and found the doors to his private office open. 2 compliance officers stood beside his desk. A woman from information security was photographing the tablet on his credenza. Malcolm Price, his divorce lawyer, was not there. Neither was his mother. No one was performing loyalty for him. "What is this?" Adrian asked. His voice stayed controlled, but his fingers tightened around his leather briefcase until the handle creaked. The senior compliance officer, a square-shouldered woman named Denise Vale, turned with a face that had been trained not to flinch around powerful men. "Mr. Cross, your system access has been suspended pending board review." "My system access," Adrian repeated. "Yes. To my company." Denise did not blink. "To the company." The correction landed with surgical precision. Adrian's eyes hardened, but nobody in the office rushed to soften the moment for him. He looked past Denise and saw the framed photograph on the wall behind his desk, himself shaking hands with the mayor after the Harbor Bridge financing announcement. He remembered Isabella standing beside him that night in a silver dress, quiet and elegant, letting him take every question. He had joked later that she looked like a decorative investor's wife. She had looked at him for a long second and said, "Decorations are expensive when people forget who paid for the room." He had laughed then. Now the memory did not feel funny. Denise handed him a printed notice. "You may collect personal items under supervision. Company devices remain here." "You are making a mistake," Adrian said. "The board is convening at 10. Then I will be there. You may attend by invitation." A muscle flickered beside his mouth. It was a small movement, almost invisible, but the employees closest to the door saw it. Adrian Cross, the man who had once fired a vice president for clearing his throat during a presentation, had just been told he needed permission to enter his own boardroom. He turned sharply and walked out before anyone could see his face change. In the elevator, his phone rang. Victoria. He answered with his eyes fixed on the closed silver doors. "Mother. Tell me this is rumor." "Which one?" "Do not be clever with me, Adrian. The club is calling. People are saying Isabella's family controlled North Pier. They are saying Helena Frost has frozen the bridge tranche. They are saying you used company money to move that girl into the penthouse on Mercer." "Camilla is not that girl. Camilla is a liability with blonde hair." Adrian closed his eyes for 1 second. "You told me to bring her yesterday. I told you to end the marriage cleanly. I did not tell you to make your mistress sit beside you like a campaign poster for bad judgment." The elevator descended too slowly. Each floor number glowed, paused, and disappeared. Adrian felt trapped inside a machine, obeying rules he had never written. "Can you call Helena?" he asked. Victoria laughed once, a dry sound with no warmth. "Helena Frost has been waiting 20 years to watch a cross man discover consequences. She will not take my call." "Then call someone else." "I have called everyone. They are all suddenly busy." Adrian opened his eyes. In the reflection of the elevator doors, his face looked narrower than it had the day before. "Where is Isabella?" Victoria asked. "How would I know?" "Find out. She will not take my calls. Then make her take them. Apologize. Offer a revised settlement. Tell her Camilla is emotional. Tell her you acted under stress. I do not care what story you use, as long as you get our family out of this." The elevator opened to the lobby. Adrian stepped out and saw, through the glass front of the building, a line of reporters gathering near the curb. Their cameras tilted toward him like hungry eyes. For the first time in his adult life, he did not walk straight toward the attention. He turned toward the service corridor. Chapter 22. Isabella was not hiding. She was in a small conference room above a bakery on West 10th, sitting across from 2 women who had survived marriages far uglier than hers, and one attorney who still kept a cracked photograph frame on her desk because a client had thrown it there during a panic attack, and later apologized through tears. The room smelled faintly of coffee, printer toner, and warm bread from downstairs. Nothing in it looked expensive. The chairs did not match. The blinds stuck if pulled too fast. The table wobbled unless someone folded a napkin under one leg. Isabella loved it more than she had loved the Cross penthouse. At the head of the table, a legal aid director named Marin Bishop slid a folder toward her. Marin was in her 50s, with silver hair cut at her chin and eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by pain performed for an audience. "This is what we can build with the first grant," Marin said. "Emergency representation, financial review, safe transportation, temporary housing, therapy referrals. If you want the program quiet, we can structure it quietly." Isabella touched the folder, but did not open it yet. "No," she said. "Quiet helps the women who already know where to ask. I want the women who think no one will believe them." Marin studied her. "Then you need a name." Isabella looked through the window at the street below. A young woman in a wrinkled coat stood outside the bakery with a stroller, checking her phone with one hand and rubbing her temple with the other. A cab honked. Someone laughed too loudly at the corner. The world kept moving with brutal normality, even when someone's life had cracked open. "Drive away," Isabella said. Marin's expression changed, not into pity, but recognition. "It sounds simple," Isabella added. "That is the point. Everyone talks about leaving like it is a dramatic transformation. Sometimes it is transportation. A lawyer. A room with a lock. Someone who says, 'Yes, what happened to you was real.'" The attorney beside Marin nodded slowly. "We can make that work." Isabella opened the folder then, and for the next hour, no one said Adrian's name unless it appeared in a funding restriction or risk memo. That felt like breathing clean air after years inside scented rooms. Her phone buzzed 7 times. She ignored it 7 times. When the meeting ended, Marin walked her to the hall. "You know this will invite attention." "I know. Men like your ex-husband usually do not enjoy becoming case studies." Isabella gave a faint smile. "He enjoyed making me one." Downstairs, the bakery owner had saved 2 paper bags of croissants for the group. Isabella paid before anyone could object, then stepped onto the sidewalk with one bag tucked under her arm. The street wind lifted strands of hair from her collar. For a moment, she stood still and let the cold touch her face. She had been looked at the day before by a room full of people expecting collapse. Today, nobody stared. Nobody whispered. Nobody measured her worth against a man at her side. That quiet anonymity felt like luxury. Then a black car pulled to the curb. Adrian stepped out. He had changed his tie. She noticed that before she noticed his face. He always changed details when frightened. A new tie, a sharper watch, a cleaner story. He believed polish could cover panic. "Isabella," he said. She did not move toward him. "How did you still know people? Then ask them for better advice." His mouth tightened, but he swallowed the reaction. "We need to talk." "No, we do not. This affects both of us." "It stopped affecting both of us when you signed the papers. You know what I mean." Isabella shifted the bakery bag to her other arm. The paper made a small, crisp sound, absurdly domestic in the middle of his desperation. "I know exactly what you mean," she said. "You mean your money, your board seat, your reputation. You mean the part of your life you thought I existed to protect." His eyes moved past her toward the upstairs windows. "What is this place?" "A place where people listen." "Are you funding something against me?" She almost laughed, not because the question was funny, but because it was so perfectly Adrian. Even now, he assumed pain became real only when organized around him. "No," she said. "I am funding something for women, using my name." "Your name is not important enough." The words struck him harder than anger would have. Adrian could withstand hatred. Hatred still kept him central. Dismissal scraped a place in him he had never learned to armor. "You want to punish me," he said. Isabella looked at him carefully. There was a time when his pain, even fake pain, would have pulled her into explanation. She would have softened her voice, made the truth smaller, helped him step away with dignity. That instinct rose for half a second like an old reflex. Then she saw Camilla's face in the signing room, proud and frightened at once. She saw Victoria tapping the table with her manicured nail. She saw Adrian sliding divorce papers toward her as if she were a folder he no longer needed. The reflex died. "Punishment would require me to arrange my life around your consequences," Isabella said. "I am done arranging." Adrian's expression slipped. For one unguarded second, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man outside a locked door with no key. "I made mistakes," he said. "You made choices." "Camilla is pregnant. I know. There is a child involved. Then become the kind of father who does not use a child as a shield." His nostrils flared. You think you are above this because of money. Isabella's smile faded. No. I survived this because of evidence. Money made it easier to leave. It did not make betrayal less humiliating. It did not make silence less heavy. It did not make your mother less cruel. Do not confuse resources with immunity. For once, Adrian had no polished answer. A reporter across the street lifted a camera. Isabella saw it before he did. She stepped back, calm as glass. You should leave before you turn this into another public scene. He followed her gaze and stiffened. Isabella? She opened the bakery door behind her and paused only long enough to look at him one final time. Adrian, the most useful thing you can do for your future is learn that not every door closed to you was slammed. Some were simply locked from the inside. Then she went in, and this time, he was the one left outside the glass. Chapter 23. Camilla Reed had imagined being chosen would feel safer. For 3 months, Adrian had made safety sound like a penthouse key, a private doctor, a diamond bracelet he fastened around her wrist while telling her she deserved to be cared for properly. He had spoken about Isabella with the careless irritation of a man discussing bad weather. Cold, distant, difficult, ungrateful. He had not said rich. He had not said powerful. He had not said he owed her family the foundation under his company. By the time Camilla understood the missing parts, she was sitting in Victoria Cross's drawing room with a contract in her lap and a cup of tea going cold beside her. Victoria sat opposite in a cream suit, back straight, legs crossed, face arranged into a smile that would have passed for kindness if Camilla had not seen the iron under it. It is standard, Victoria said. Camilla looked down at the document again. Cross-family maternal support and confidentiality agreement. The title alone made her stomach tighten. Standard for who? She asked. Victoria's smile thinned. For women entering complicated family circumstances. I am having Adrian's baby. Exactly. The room was too warm. Camilla could feel sweat at the back of her neck beneath her loose waves. She had dressed carefully that morning in a pale blue maternity dress, soft makeup, pearl earrings, the image of tasteful vulnerability. She had thought Victoria would fuss over her, perhaps criticize her manners, but ultimately accept her. Instead, the older woman had offered tea, placed the contract on the table, and explained that security required structure. Structure, apparently, meant Camilla would receive housing, medical care, and a monthly allowance in exchange for silence, obedience, and supervised media contact. The child would carry the Cross name only after paternity verification and board stabilization. Public appearances would be determined by family council. Any disclosure damaging to Cross Meridian would suspend support. Camilla's fingers curled around the paper. Adrian knows about this? Adrian is under stress. That is not an answer. Victoria's gaze sharpened. It is the only answer you need. For the first time since the affair began, Camilla understood with physical clarity that she had not climbed into Adrian's world. She had been placed in a display case inside it. I need my own lawyer, she said. Unnecessary. I think it is necessary. Victoria leaned forward. The diamond at her throat caught the light like a small blade. My dear, you are very young, very visible, and very pregnant. You have enjoyed privileges that most women in your position never see. I would hate for confusion to make you ungrateful. Camilla's cheeks flushed. Shame moved through her first, hot and immediate. Then anger followed, slower and steadier. She thought of Isabella in the signing room. Isabella had looked at this woman without trembling. Camilla had mistaken that composure for coldness. Now she wondered how many rooms Isabella had survived with Victoria smiling across from her. I am not signing today, Camilla said. Victoria's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Did Isabella speak to you? The question revealed too much. Camilla held on to that. No, she lied. Victoria set down her cup. Then listen to me. Isabella Hart is not your friend. She is using you to hurt this family. Camilla almost laughed. The sound caught in her throat because part of her wanted to believe it. Believing Isabella was the villain would be easier. It would allow Camilla to remain the chosen woman, misunderstood but victorious. Yet the contract in her lap told a different story in black ink. This family hurt itself, Camilla said. Victoria stood. The movement was so controlled that it felt louder than shouting. You may leave the document with me, Camilla added, surprised by her own voice. It shook, but it did not break. My attorney will review it. Your attorney? Yes. And Who will pay for that? Camilla's hand went to her stomach, not in performance this time, but instinct. The baby shifted faintly, a flutter she could not explain to anyone without sounding sentimental. I will find a way. Victoria looked at her as if she had become inconvenient furniture. You girls always think defiance is the same thing as leverage. Camilla rose with difficulty, holding the contract against her chest. No, but I am starting to learn the difference. She left without finishing the tea. Outside, she sat in the back of her rideshare and stared at the city through damp eyes. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Adrian and 1 message from an unknown number. Independent Counsel. Marin Bishop. Tell her Isabella Hart said the first consultation is covered. Camilla read it twice. Then she did something she had never done with any gift Adrian had given her. She said thank you aloud, even though no one was there to hear it. Chapter 24. The Cross Meridian board meeting began with silence so complete that the air conditioning sounded accusatory. Adrian entered 10 minutes late because the security team had made him wait in the lobby until Helena Frost's assistant confirmed his invitation. By then, the directors were already seated around the long walnut table. No coffee service waited at his usual place. No presentation deck bore his name. His chair at the head of the table had been removed. He stood near the door for 1 beat too long. Helena Frost gestured toward a seat halfway down the side. Mr. Cross. Not Adrian. Not Chief Executive. Mr. Cross. He sat. Helena was a spare woman in a charcoal jacket, with white hair pulled into a knot and a voice that rarely rose because it never needed to. She had chaired banks, foundations, and 1 museum board that had survived a scandal involving 3 stolen paintings and a donor with more arrogance than sense. She had no appetite for theatrical men. We will proceed, she said. A screen lit up at the end of the room. Slide after slide appeared. Payments routed through consulting invoices. Travel expenses billed as investor relations, but matching Camilla's trips. A luxury apartment classified under executive accommodations. A crisis communications retainer opened 2 hours after the divorce signing, charged to a subsidiary with no reason to need reputation management. Prenatal concierge services hidden under human resources wellness. Adrian kept his face still. Inside, he counted exits. Director Sutton, who had golfed with him for years, avoided eye contact. Elaine Mercer, chair of audit, watched the screen with a disgust she did not bother to hide. 2 independent directors whispered once, then fell silent when Helena lifted a finger. This is misleading, Adrian said when the presentation paused. Helena turned to him. How? Executive protections often include family logistics. Ms. Reed was not family at the time of the expenditures. She is carrying my child. That does not retroactively change invoices. Elaine Mercer leaned forward. Nor does it explain why the medical concierge was coded as retention therapy for senior engineers. A low murmur moved around the table. Adrian looked at the screen, then at Helena. Who provided this? The documents were obtained through internal audit and lender review. North Pier, among others. Isabella, he said. Helena's expression did not change. Ms. Hart did not create your expense reports. The sentence sank into the room like a stone. Adrian felt heat climb his neck. He wanted to say Isabella had plotted. Isabella had waited. Isabella had humiliated him in return. But every accusation led back to the same problem. The evidence existed because he had made the decisions. He could not call her cruel without inviting someone to ask why truth felt like cruelty. I built this company, he said. Helena folded her hands. You scaled a company that had already been made bankable by capital you did not fully understand, and governance you treated as decorative. That is an insult. It is a summary. Another slide appeared. Employment separation proposal. Interim executive appointment. Suspension of voting authority pending investigation. Personal repayment demand for misclassified expenses. Referral to outside counsel. Adrian stared at the list. The room did not tilt. It sharpened. Every face became too clear, every reflection in the polished table too precise. You cannot remove me, he said. Helena looked almost tired. We can. Temporarily. We just did. The market will punish you. The market has already punished us for uncertainty. We are reducing it. And who replaces me? Helena clicked the remote. A new photograph appeared on the screen. Martin Vale, chief operating officer, the quiet man Adrian had once called useful because he never interrupted. Adrian laughed once, harshly. Martin cannot sell vision. No, Elaine said, but he can read an invoice before signing it. The laugh that moved through the room was small, uncomfortable, and lethal. Adrian stood so quickly his chair struck the wall behind him. This is temporary, Helena nodded. Consequences often are at first. He looked at the directors, waiting for someone to object. Sutton examined his pen. Elaine closed her folder. Martin, from the far end of the table, looked sad, but not surprised. No one saved him. Adrian walked out with his shoulders square. He made it past the glass doors, past the assistant who would not meet his eyes, past the reception desk where his name had already disappeared from the executive visitor screen. Only in the stairwell did he stop. His breathing came too fast. He braced one hand on the rail and lowered his head. For years he had believed the worst sound was a woman crying because of him. Now he learned it was a room full of people deciding he no longer mattered. Chapter 25 News travels differently in wealthy circles. Poor scandal has footsteps. It knocks on doors, arrives in unpaid bills, echoes through family kitchens. Rich scandal wears perfume. It moves through charity lunches, golf carts, private school pickup lines, and dinner tables where nobody raises their voice but everyone carries a knife under the napkin. By Friday evening, everyone who had once praised Adrian Cross's brilliance had suddenly always had doubts. At the Whitmore Club, where Victoria had ruled the corner table for 11 years, a woman from the museum board touched her arm and said, "How is Adrian holding up?" with the mournful softness people use when they hope the answer is terrible. Victoria smiled until her cheekbones ached. Family matters are always exaggerated by outsiders. "Of course," the woman said. "And Isabella? Such poise. I saw the photograph of that car." There it was again. The car. Victoria had spent a lifetime making sure people knew the Crosses owned beautiful things. Houses. Art. Seats. At galas. Influence. But the DB6 had become a story because Adrian wanted it, and Isabella drove away in it without looking back. Symbols were dangerous. They did not need long explanations. They slipped into people's minds and stayed. Victoria returned home early and found Adrian in the library, jacket off, phone on the table, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. He looked up as she entered, and for a second she saw the child he had been, furious because a game had ended with rules he did not like. "You made her famous," Victoria said. He rubbed his forehead. "Not now." "Yes, now. You paraded Camilla into the divorce signing. You turned a legal process into a stage. Isabella walked off that stage and took the audience with her. You wanted a clean break. I wanted discretion. You wanted her to feel small." Victoria's mouth closed. The accusation hung between them, too true to be easily denied. Adrian stood. "Do not pretend this was only my cruelty. You enjoyed it. You called her pale. You called her replaceable. You treated her like a guest in a family she kept solvent." Victoria's face went very still. "Careful. Why? What will you do? Remove my system access too?" Her hand moved before she seemed to decide on it. The slap cracked through the library. Adrian's head turned with it. For a moment, neither of them breathed. Victoria lowered her hand slowly. Her fingers trembled, and the tremor frightened her more than the violence. "You are still my son," she said, voice tight, "and you will not speak to me as if I were one of your employees." Adrian touched his cheek. His laugh was quiet and bitter. "No. Employees can quit." Victoria's eyes flashed, but he did not stop. "Isabella did." The name changed the room. Victoria looked away first. "She will not come back," Adrian said. "She does not need to come back. She needs to call Helena." "She won't. Then make her." "You keep saying that as if I have anything left she wants." For once, Victoria had no answer ready. Adrian picked up his phone and opened Isabella's number again. The call did not connect. Not because she was ignoring it this time. Blocked. He stared at the screen. It was such a small word, ordinary and gray, yet it struck him harder than the board vote. Blocked meant she had not forgotten him. She had made a decision about access. She had looked at the door and chosen a lock. He set the phone down with care. "She loved you once," Victoria said, softer now. Adrian closed his eyes. He remembered Isabella the week after their wedding, barefoot in the kitchen at midnight, trying to make grilled cheese because he had missed dinner. He remembered her laughing when she burned the first one. He remembered thinking, almost tenderly, that she was too good for the room she was in. Then the memory shifted. He saw himself years later, walking past her untouched plate because Camilla had sent a message. He saw Isabella at charity dinners, smiling politely while he corrected her in public. He saw her hand resting on a document he had not read because he assumed she would handle the quiet parts. Love had not vanished in one betrayal. He had spent years teaching it to leave. Yes, he said. She did. Victoria sat down slowly. Neither of them spoke after that. In the silence, the crosshouse seemed enormous and badly furnished with regret. Chapter 26. The first time Isabella visited the Hart family garage after the divorce, she went alone. The building sat behind an old brick townhouse near the park, invisible from the street unless someone knew which black iron gate to open. Her grandfather had bought it when people still thought city garages were practical rather than precious. Over the decades, the space had become a family archive of motion. Cars under soft covers, shelves of tools, old rally photographs, leather gloves in labeled drawers, oil stains no restorer had been allowed to erase. The DB6 waited beneath its emerald cover. Isabella stood beside it for a while before touching the fabric. As a child, she had believed the car belonged to her grandfather because adults said it did. Later, she learned ownership was more complicated. The car had been bought with her grandmother's money. Lily Hart had inherited shipping shares, sold them before a market crash, and invested in steel when men at the bank told her she was emotional. She had loved the Aston Martin, because it was fast, yes, but also because it made men reveal themselves. They praised her taste when they thought her husband had paid. They called her reckless when they learned she had. Isabella pulled the cover back. The green paint caught the overhead light with quiet depth. Not flashy, not begging. A color that rewarded attention. She always said it was not a trophy, a voice said behind her. It was a witness. Isabella turned. Her father, Thomas Hart, stood near the entrance in an old wool coat. He looked older than he had at the wedding, and perhaps she looked older too. His hair had gone fully white at the temples. His eyes, still sharp, softened when they met hers. I thought you were in Boston, she said. I was. Your mother told me you came here. She worries. She has taste. Isabella smiled despite herself. Thomas walked to the car and rested his hand lightly on the roof. Your grandmother drove this the day she left the man everyone thought she would marry before me. Isabella's brows lifted. I never heard that version. Families polish stories after people die. Lily refused his proposal at a country house in Connecticut, drove back to New York in a storm, and arrived with one headlight out and mud up the sides. Her father was furious about the car. Her mother asked if she was hungry. Was she? Starving? Isabella laughed softly, then pressed her fingertips to the hood. Thomas watched her. Adrian asked me once if I would sell it. Her smile disappeared. When? 2 years ago, at the Falconer benefit. You were speaking with the hospital director. He found me near the terrace and said the car should be driven by someone who understood it. Isabella felt a strange stillness settle in her chest. Not shock exactly, more like another missing puzzle piece sliding into place. What did you say? I told him I agreed, which was why it would never be his. For several seconds, Isabella said nothing. Then she leaned against the workbench, one hand over her mouth, and laughed. The laugh surprised her. It was not cruel, not triumphant. It was release. Thomas waited until it passed. I should have told you. About Adrian asking? About many things. He looked at the car, then back at her. Your mother and I thought we were respecting your marriage by not interfering. We watched too long from a civilized distance. Isabella shook her head. He was my husband. I defended him even when no one asked. That does not absolve us. His honesty hurt, but gently. She had expected family after divorce to arrive with either rage or pity. Her father offered accountability, which felt rarer. I stayed because leaving felt dramatic, she said. I kept telling myself adults work through disappointment. I did not want to be the woman who failed at marriage. Thomas's voice softened. Your grandmother used to say a failed cage is a successful door. Isabella looked at the DB6 again. The car was beautiful, yes, But beauty was not the reason Adrian had frozen when she drove away. He had frozen because the car announced a truth he had worked hard not to see. Isabella had a history before him, a family before him, capital before him, a self before him. He had mistaken her quietness for emptiness. "I do not want the story to become only about the car," she said. "It will for some people. Then I will give them a better story." Thomas smiled. "That sounds like Lily." Isabella walked to the driver's side and opened the door. The leather scent rose around her, old and clean. She sat behind the wheel and rested both hands lightly where her grandmother's hands had once been. For a moment, she imagined Lily in the storm, one headlight cutting through rain, hungry but free. Then Isabella closed the door and started the engine. The sound filled the garage, deep and alive, not like victory over a man, but like a promise kept across generations. Chapter 27. Adrian saw the first drive-away announcement online because someone sent it to him with a message that read, "Savage branding." He almost deleted it. Then he opened the link. The page was clean, white, and simple. No photograph of Isabella, no dramatic language, no accusations in capital letters. Just the name of the program, a list of services, and a sentence at the top. Leaving should not require wealth, permission, or an audience. Adrian read it 3 times. He wanted to hate it. Instead, he recognized it. There were no details about him. Yet every line exposed the architecture of what he had taken for granted. Emergency legal support for spouses pressured into unfair agreements. Financial tracing for hidden assets. Transportation planning. Documentation storage. Confidential counseling. A hotline staffed by people trained not to ask why someone had waited so long. That last phrase made him set the phone down. Why did you wait so long? He had asked Isabella that once, years before the divorce, after she told him his mother had humiliated her at a luncheon. Why did you wait until now to mention it? He had said it impatiently, as if the delay were the offense, not the humiliation. He remembered her face. Calm, pale, closing. He had mistaken that closure for weakness, too. The next week, Adrian's attorneys sent Isabella a letter claiming the drive-away program risked implying defamatory conduct by unnamed former spouses whose identities might be inferred. The letter was 5 pages long, expensive, and empty. Marin Bishop answered in 2 paragraphs. The program does not name your client. If your client recognizes himself in general descriptions of coercive financial behavior, public humiliation, or retaliatory legal pressure, we suggest he discuss that recognition with his own counsel. Isabella did not call him. She did not gloat. She did not leak the letter. That made it worse. Being attacked would have allowed Adrian to feel powerful in opposition. Being ignored forced him to sit alone with the echo. His life shrank in practical ways first. Invitations vanished. The penthouse on Mercer was no longer billed through Cross Meridian, and Camilla refused to let him pay anything without written terms from her attorney. Victoria stopped hosting dinners because every guest seemed to arrive carrying either curiosity or judgment. The board investigation moved with slow, expensive patience. Adrian discovered that disgrace was not one dramatic fall. It was a series of ordinary moments where the world no longer adjusted itself around him. One Thursday afternoon, he went to a coffee shop near the temporary apartment his counsel had advised him to rent separately from Camilla. He stood in line behind a young couple arguing quietly over a stroller. The woman looked exhausted. The man said something under his breath that made her go still. Adrian felt irritation first. Private conflict in public had always embarrassed him. Then the man reached for the woman's phone. Adrian did not move. Neither did anyone else. The woman pulled the phone back, face flushed with fear and fury. The man smiled, a small, controlling smile Adrian knew too well because he had worn versions of it in nicer rooms. Something inside him recoiled. Not nobility, not redemption, just recognition without a mirror flattering it. "Leave her phone alone," Adrian said. The man turned. "Mind your business." Adrian looked at the woman. "Do you want someone to call you a cab?" Her eyes flicked to him, suspicious and desperate. The man shoved the stroller handle toward her. "This is family." "Then act like it," Adrian said. The coffee shop went quiet. A barista reached for the phone near the register. The woman stepped back with the stroller, breathing fast. The man cursed and walked out. Adrian did not feel heroic. He felt sick. The woman whispered thank you and left before he could respond. He stood there with his coffee cooling in his hand, realizing with a kind of dull horror that the smallest decent action had felt unfamiliar. That night, he wrote an email to Isabella. He did not send it. He wrote another. He did not send that either. The third one was only 4 lines. You were right that I made choices. I am beginning to understand the size of them. I will not ask you to fix what I broke. I am sorry. He stared at the screen for a long time, then sent it to her attorney instead of her personal address. No reply came. 2 days later, Malcolm Price forwarded a formal acknowledgement from Isabella's counsel. Message received. Adrian sat in his quiet apartment and read those 2 words until the screen dimmed. They were not forgiveness. They were not cruelty. They were a boundary, properly filed. Chapter 28. The first drive-away day took place on a rainy Saturday. Marin had warned Isabella that events like this did not photograph well. Real help rarely did. It was intake forms, childcare volunteers, plain sandwiches, private conversations behind closed doors, and women pretending to be calmer than they were because fear had taught them to manage other people's comfort. Isabella did not want it to photograph well. She wanted it to work. By 9 in the morning, the foundation building was full. A mother with 2 boys signed up for a financial review while the younger child slept with his cheek pressed against her coat. A retired teacher asked if emotional abuse counted when nobody had ever hit her. A nurse brought a folder of bank statements arranged by date and apologized for the mess, though every page was clipped neatly. A college student sat near the window, silent, thumb rubbing the cracked edge of her phone case until a counselor sat beside her without asking a question. Isabella moved through the rooms quietly, not as a savior, not as a celebrity, but as a person making sure the copier had paper and the coffee had not burned. At noon, Camilla arrived. She came through the side entrance wearing a gray coat and no jewelry except small gold hoops. Her pregnancy had become impossible to hide, and she carried herself with the careful balance of someone whose body had turned into both refuge and battlefield. When she saw Isabella in the hall, she stopped. For 1 second, the old scene stood between them. The conference room, the divorce papers, Camilla's smug tilt of the chin, Adrian's hand near hers like a public claim. Camilla looked down first. I almost did not come, she said. I assumed that. I thought everyone would hate me. Some might. Camilla flinched, but Isabella did not soften the truth into something prettier. But the legal clinic is not a forgiveness contest, Isabella continued. It is a place to get clear information before signing documents that affect your life. Camilla swallowed. Victoria sent a revised agreement, then let someone independent read it. Adrian says he does not agree with everything his mother is doing. Isabella's gaze held hers. Adrian says many things when consequences arrive. Color rose in Camilla's cheeks. For a moment, defensive pride flickered. Then she looked toward the waiting room, where women sat with paper cups and tired eyes. I know I hurt you, Camilla said quietly. The hallway noise seemed to dim. Isabella had imagined, once, that apology would feel like a prize. It did not. It felt delicate, almost inconvenient, because it asked her to decide what kind of woman she wanted to be after victory. Yes, she said. You did. Camilla's eyes shone. I believed what he said about you. I wanted to believe it. That does not surprise me. I am sorry. Isabella studied the young woman in front of her. Camilla was not innocent. She had enjoyed the position of being chosen. She had sat beside a wife at a divorce table and mistaken cruelty for security. But she was also standing in a hallway with a child inside her and a family contract waiting to reduce both of them into manageable risk. Justice, Isabella thought, was not the same thing as imitation. She would not become Victoria in better clothes. I accept that you are sorry, Isabella said. I am not ready to offer anything beyond that. Camilla nodded quickly, wiping under one eye. That is more than I expected. Room 3, Isabella said. Ask for Attorney Bishop. Camilla hesitated. Why are you helping me? Isabella looked past her to the waiting room. A little boy was lining up crackers on the windowsill while his mother filled out paperwork with one hand. Because the child you are carrying did not choose the room where adults made their mistakes, she said. And because women do not become safer by proving they deserve help. Camilla pressed her lips together and nodded again. When she walked toward room 3, Isabella stayed in the hallway until the door closed behind her. Marin appeared beside Isabella with 2 coffees. That was harder than the board meeting, wasn't it? Isabella accepted 1 cup. The board had documents. Apologies are messy, eh? So are boundaries, Marin smiled. Good thing you seem fond of both. The rain thickened against the windows. Outside, the street reflected red brake lights and gray sky. Inside, phones rang, pens moved, children murmured, and women began the slow work of believing their own records. That evening, after the last appointment ended, Isabella found an envelope on the reception desk. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed Lily Hart standing beside the DB 6 decades earlier, one gloved hand on the driver's door, rain darkening the shoulders of her coat. On the back, in Thomas's handwriting, was a line Isabella had never heard before. She came home with mud on the car and peace on her face. Isabella held the photograph for a long time. Then she placed it in her bag beside the first drive-away day attendance list. Chapter 29. 3 months after the divorce, Cross Meridian held its emergency shareholder meeting in a hotel ballroom that Adrian had once considered too modest for company events. The downgrade had been deliberate. Helena Frost believed optics should serve facts. The company did not need chandeliers, it needed credibility. Adrian attended because his counsel advised absence would look worse. He arrived through a side entrance in a navy suit that fit perfectly and helped nothing. Cameras flashed as he crossed the lobby. Reporters called questions about the audit, about Camilla, about North Pier, about the repayment demand, about whether he intended to resign permanently. He did not answer. Inside the ballroom, shareholders sat in rows facing a low stage. The mood was not dramatic. It was colder than drama. Investors do not always need raised voices to express disgust. Sometimes they simply turn pages. Isabella arrived 5 minutes before the meeting began. She wore a black coat over a pale gray dress, her hair pinned loosely at the nape of her neck. No diamonds, no visible attempt to dominate. Beside her walked Helena Frost. Behind them came 2 North Pier representatives and Marin Bishop, whose presence made several people whisper because legal aid directors did not usually attend shareholder meetings unless someone wanted a point made without saying it aloud. Adrian saw Isabella from across the room. For half a second, the old impulse rose. Go to her. Explain. Make contact. Reclaim some private channel between them. Then he saw the security guard near her aisle and understood she had planned even the distance. She sat 3 rows ahead of him. Not at his side. Not behind him. Ahead. The meeting began with Helena's report. Revenue stabilization. Governance correction. Interim leadership. Lender confidence. Ongoing investigation. Personal reimbursement. Revised ethics controls. A new independent committee for executive spending. Every phrase was clean. Every phrase buried him a little deeper. Then Helena invited Isabella to speak on behalf of North Pier's family trust allocation. Adrian's stomach tightened. Isabella walked to the lectern. The room changed when she stood there. Not because she demanded attention, but because people leaned forward to offer it. My remarks will be brief, she said. Her voice was steady. No tremor, no performance. The same composure that had infuriated Adrian at the divorce signing now held a room of investors without strain. North Pier supported Cross Meridian because the company served real infrastructure needs and employed people whose work mattered. That remains true. Our concern is not one failed marriage. It is the mistaken belief that private entitlement can be subsidized by public trust, corporate accounts, and employee labor. A few heads turned toward Adrian. He kept his eyes on the floor near the stage. The corrective actions announced today are necessary, Isabella continued. But governance is not only punishment after damage. It is prevention before harm becomes culture. For that reason, North Pier will maintain conditional support under independent oversight. We will also fund, separately and without cost to Cross Meridian, a confidential employee legal resource for those facing domestic financial coercion. The room stirred. Adrian looked up. Isabella did not look at him. No company is strengthened by pretending private abuses remain private when they distort judgment, spending, leadership, and workplace safety. We can do better without needing a scandal to teach us how. She paused. That is all. She stepped away from the lectern. The applause began in scattered pockets, then spread. It was not thunderous. It was worse for Adrian because it was measured, credible, adult. People were not cheering a spectacle. They were accepting a new center of gravity. After the meeting, he waited near the side corridor. He knew better than to approach her in the ballroom. He had learned at least that much. When she passed, he said only, "Isabella." She stopped, but kept several feet between them. Helena's assistant paused nearby. "That was a good speech," he said. "It was a necessary one. I received your counsel's acknowledgement." "Good." He tried to read her face and found no invitation there. "I am in therapy," he said. She nodded once. "I hope you use it honestly." "Camilla has her own attorney." "Good. The baby is a girl." For the first time, Isabella's expression shifted. Not pain, not jealousy, a quiet gravity. "Then raise her to recognize cages even when they are expensive," she said. Adrian looked down. There were 100 things he could have said. That he missed her, that he regretted everything, that the penthouse felt hollow, that he had found one of her old scarves in a drawer and sat with it in his hands like an idiot, that he had not understood love until he had converted it into absence. But saying those things would still ask her to hold them. So he did not. "I will try," he said. Isabella gave him a calm, unreadable look. "Do better than try." Then she walked away with Helena, and Adrian stayed where he was until the corridor emptied. Outside, through the glass doors, he saw a dark green car waiting at the curb, the DB6. A valet held the door for Isabella, but she took the keys from him and opened it herself. Adrian watched as she slid behind the wheel. For the first time, the sight did not stun him because of the car. It stunned him because she looked at home in a life where he had no seat. Chapter 30. Before bed, Isabella opened the old drawer. Camilla's note, Victoria's letter, the photo of Lily, the first drive-away day program, the divorce decree. She took out the decree and looked again at her signature. People had once said she signed without tears because she was cold. They had been wrong. She signed without tears because she had learned the difference between grief and performance. Because tears belonged to her, not to Adrian, not to Victoria, not to Camilla, not to the lawyers, not to the room arranged to watch her lose. She placed the decree back. Then she wrote one line in her journal. "I did not leave with nothing. I left with myself, and the keys were only proof." Outside, the city moved in quiet lights. In the garage below, the DB6 rested under its cover. In the foundation building, women slept in rooms with locks they controlled. Somewhere, someone was signing papers with shaking hands. Somewhere else, someone was driving away. Maybe in a vintage car. Maybe in a borrowed minivan. Maybe in a taxi with one suitcase and no plan beyond the next safe door. Isabella hoped they all knew the same thing. The exit did not need to impress the person watching. It only needed to carry them toward a life that was finally theirs. Months later, a magazine asked Isabella for an interview about resilience. The editor wanted photographs of the car, the foundation, and Isabella standing near a window in soft light, looking elegant enough to sell the idea that pain could be transformed into style. Isabella declined the photo shoot but agreed to answer one question in writing. "What did you feel when you signed the divorce papers without crying?" She sat with that question longer than she expected. The easy answer would have been strength. The marketable answer would have been freedom. The answer people wanted was revenge, because revenge photographed better than healing and gave strangers a clean place to clap. But the truth was quieter. She had felt tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of being measured against another woman's youth. Tired of being expected to collapse so everyone else could decide whether she deserved sympathy. Tired of carrying a marriage that had treated her patience as proof she had no weight. So she wrote that. "I did not cry because the room was not entitled to my grief. I signed because the facts were already finished. The dramatic part was not the signature. It was every small morning before it, when I woke up and decided not to disappear from my own life." The magazine printed the answer without a photograph. It spread anyway. Women sent letters to the foundation. Some were written on expensive stationery. Some came from public library computers. Some were only 3 lines long, full of spelling mistakes and courage. Isabella kept a few in a locked drawer, not as trophies, but as reminders that a story became useful only when it opened a door for someone else. One letter arrived with no name. I thought leaving had to look brave. Now I understand it can look calm. Isabella read it twice, then pinned it inside the staff room where no visitor would see it. The next morning, Marin added a note below it in blue ink. Calm is sometimes bravery after it has learned to breathe. On the anniversary of the divorce, Isabella drove the DB6 out before sunrise. The city was almost empty. Delivery trucks hissed along wet streets. A few office windows glowed high above the avenues. She stopped at a red light near the building where she had once signed her name under Adrian's cold gaze, Camilla's trembling pride, and Victoria's polished contempt. The lobby was dark. No one waited for her there. For a moment, she placed one hand over the steering wheel and felt the vibration of the engine through her palm. She did not feel victorious in the sharp way people imagined. Victory had softened into something better. It had become habit. It had become breakfast alone without dread. Meetings where her voice entered first. Friendships without performance. Sleep without rehearsing tomorrow's defense. The light turned green. Isabella drove on. She did not look back at the building. Not because she was afraid of remembering, because she remembered clearly enough, and the road ahead finally deserved her full attention. That was the secret nobody in the signing room had understood. A woman did not become powerful the moment others recognized her. Sometimes she had been powerful for years, quietly surviving, quietly learning, quietly waiting for the day she would stop asking permission to leave. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, hidden strength, and the quiet moment a woman takes her life back.